Did the Zillow news have like an impact on them, you think, like a scare in the iBuyer like world for consumers?
Yeah, it did a little bit. So they dropped a little bit when Zillow said we're not going to be buying homes directly from people anymore. So you saw it drop from say $24, $23, which is where Opendoor is sitting at right now, down to about 20. Then that co-founder on Twitter started gloating, saying earnings were going to be great, and it popped back up to 23. Then it came back down on earnings day, like you saw, down to 20. But then immediately before earnings come out, that 1 hour between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock, it just needles right back up to 23, 24 with no news yet. I mean, we're waiting. I'm like, at 3:59, the stock was terrible. All of a sudden at 4 o'clock, it's great after hours. I mean, what are these after hours people know? And why weren't they buying at 3:59? Why weren't they buying 2 minutes earlier? I mean,
the thing that's crazy too is if you look at the bottom here, this is the volume of trading, right? So you look at how low those bars are at the bottom there. That's Wednesday. That's going into the day, and then
that's right at 4 o'clock. Like I called it, because I'm sitting there watching it.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of volume. And then 9:30 the next morning, the volume just, I mean, it tripled in terms of trading volume. How many people were getting into and out of the market? Yeah, it's kind of nuts. It's going to be scale, right? So if you have an institutional buyer, I'd have to look, because I don't keep an eye on Opendoor. I'd have to look to see how many mutual funds they're in. I'm sure there's a large handful of mutual funds that they're owned in. And when you think about a mutual fund, right? So you and me buy 100 shares. Mutual fund buys 100,000 shares, right? Like that's the kind of scale that we're talking about. So when something like that starts to move, if there's sentiment where as their price starts to move downwardly in individual positions, mutual fund managers have guidelines they have to operate within. So they may have had to sell at a certain threshold, right? So if it starts to pull down, there could be an endowment like Harvard that owns 100,000 shares of Opendoor. I'm not saying they do, but they could. And their investment policy statement says that with this level of volatility, you can't be in that position anymore, and they have to sell. If that happens, then you have this influx of shares in the market, which will depress the value more. But then you have the opportunity to pick it up. Somebody else has a different investment policy who says, hey, you can't buy it until it's down to this. And there could have been a big sell and a big buy very close together, because mutual funds don't trade until 4 o'clock at the end of the day, right? So you can't buy and sell a mutual fund in the middle of the day. All of that stuff happens at 4 o'clock. So there's a really good chance that something happened where somebody's sell trigger was set off on one side, but the buy trigger was set up on the other side. Not the same fund, but there could have been two different classes of people, institutional, that kind of thing. That could have been the pickup. That happens not a ton, not quite at this scale.
You've got so many people that are buying Opendoor stock that think 100% of people are now going to want to sell their home at essentially a discount for the convenience. And so I ran some numbers. There's going to be about 7.1 million home sales in 2021. Okay. I actually added home sales to what Opendoor is going to do this year, just to like be nice and just like fluff it up.
Yeah, they are the stats a little.
Yeah, they are 0.003% of the total market. Okay, so they're not even a player. They're not even 1%. They're not even close to 1% of total sales in America. And they sold 6,000 homes in Q3, Pat. 6,000 homes. There's going to be 7.1 million sales this year. But all these people, they're like hitting me in the comments. They're like, you keep calling them a home flipper, because that's what they are. They're a home flipper at scale. That's why they're what'd you say, a $14 billion market cap? They're a nice sized company. They're a big company for home flippers. They're the biggest, right? They're the biggest home flipper. It's not your local home flipper. These guys are, doing it across the country. But you got all these people in the comments saying they're a market maker. That's the cute little word all these investors want to use. The market maker. I said, no, they're a home flipper. They're a home flipper at scale. And they're just convinced that everybody's going to want to give up showings, open houses, and the inconvenience of selling your home for top dollar. And I just believe, call in if you disagree, I just believe most consumers are going to want to sell their home for the most money they can possibly get. So after netting out all the fees, okay, if I got to pay an agent this, and it's going to cost me this to close, I have closing costs, this, that, and the other thing. You don't have closing costs no matter who you sell to, but if I can get more using an agent than selling to a home flipper, even if they're a sophisticated home flipper like Opendoor, if I can get a 5% spread on a $300,000 house by working with an agent, that's $15,000 in that home seller's pocket of real money. I believe most people are willing to go through the inconvenience of showings, and a lot of times it's closer to 10%, so 30,000. Let's just call it $15,000 to $30,000. Do you want $15,000 to $30,000 more when you sell your house to go through the inconvenience of showings and potentially open houses?